Welcome to Field Intelligence by Fluix. Conversations with industry leaders about reshaping field management safety, productivity, and performance.
Thank you so much again, John, for joining us today. And it's such a pleasure to have you in this discussion.
Pleasure. Absolutely. Yeah. Always nice to talk to you.
John, as you know, in the boardroom, safety is reported in numbers, while on site, it's lived in moments. At Fluix, we're genuinely curious about what happens in between. We want to learn from leaders operating at scale about what actually drives safer outcomes, where paperwork helps or hinders, how data from the field can help shape smarter decisions. And this discussion is where we build and share those conversations so that field-first organizations and the systems that support them are grounded in real operational truth. And that comes from your experience and these conversations. So we're delighted to have you here. Let's start straight from it. From a diver in ACL to being in bomb disposal squad to this role. How has the journey been?
Yeah, well, it's been pretty exciting. I'm very fortunate to have been, lucky enough to sort of be in industries where, it keeps you busy, really, really busy. It keeps you mentally sort of busy and physically busy as well. Right from the sort of beginning. I've spent most of my career in environments where, getting safety wrong just isn't an option. It's actually life or death. Absolutely. If I go right back to my time in the Royal Navy as a clearance diver, and bomb disposal expert, you have to follow your training. You have to follow the rules, and what you've been taught. Because if you don't, it's not a case of just being told off or you getting a bit of sort of work wrong. It's literally someone's life or your life on the end of, and that to me is what's it's kind of like sort of helped me through the rest of my career, that early sort of starting off like that and having to sort of recognize the discipline involved, the discipline required to get the job right. I've probably lived a few more lifetimes than other people by now, I'd say, by the sort of different things that I've done. But I consider myself to be very lucky what I've been exposed to and what I've been able to do.
Let's talk about it, because safety is a broad term. What does safety in your current role in a giga project looks like?
If you look at us as Red Sea Global, we're transitioning at the moment. Actually, we're going from a developer, a constructor, a major contractor, really delivering work on the ground, to an operator, to an organization that delivers hotel operations, hospitality operations to members of the public. Right now, these are at the sort of high end. These are sort of VVIP people who, are paying, top rate and expect the highest standards. Safety for me right now is one day it can be your sort of talking to a worker about, the tool they're using or the equipment that they're wearing. The next day, it could be about making sure that the wave pool or the climbing wall is fit and safe for purpose for a guest to come along. Or it could simply be about food safety and food hygiene, and making sure that those standards are the best they can be. It's a completely random role, and it covers such a broad spectrum of hazards and risks, and I think that's what's really exciting about it as well. And again, I'll say it again. I'll probably say it many times through the discussion. Is that it's as a safety practitioner, I don't think you could ask for a role any more than this. I think it's kind of like where we really want to be. As a safety professional, you want to be tested every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how much of your training and experience, first as a diver in Royal Navy, then in bomb disposal in the UK Maritime Forces, translated into your career in health and safety? Because risk taking seems to be a part of your day to day from everything that you've done. So help me understand what led you to this point in your career.
Yeah. So, and you're right. Yeah. I think, I guess what I would say is in terms of risk taking, I believe that anything is achievable. You can do anything in the work environment. I mean, we send people into space. We're planning to send people to Mars and live on Mars. You're not going to do that knowing that, look, hey, it's a great idea, but some of you might not come back. You just, some of you might get killed along the way. You don't do that. And it was the same in the Royal Navy. We never put it into the water, for example, without knowing the equipment was the best it could be. The training that the individual had gone through was the best it could be. And the individual was fit mentally and physically to be able to do the job, to meet the demands of the job. So for me, I don't think that the work environment right now is any different to that. We shouldn't be putting people to work unless they've had the right training, they've got the right attitude, they're fit and they're healthy to do the job. And we know that the job can be done safely. So in terms of the principles, there's not a lot different. The outcome, if it goes wrong, is different, obviously. If I put a piece of explosives, an item of explosives down on a mine under the water and the ship wasn't away far enough, there are thousands of people potentially at risk there. So the outcome is slightly different, but the actual principle involved in executing the activity is very similar. And then, other sort of roles that I've been part of, again, really looking to be part of some major projects. I worked on the development of a power station, 1.2 megawatt power station in Bristol in the UK. Over 2,500 workers, and literally, the high-end technology equipment that one slight piece of damage, that's it's ruined. And this is millions and millions of pounds worth of innovative technology being used in the building of this sort of power station. You're talking, hundreds of sort of meters in the air, people working, a constant sort of supply of expert workers from different parts of the world, and trying to bring all that together. Again, back to sort of, if I call on my sort of military days, bringing people together, bringing expertise together to work together as a team. It certainly helped me. Sort of, I sort of relied on my skills that I picked up in teamwork, in working as part of a team and then leading a team, and that helped me in environments like that as well. So it's, I think, I sat down the other day and I thought to myself, has everything I've done so far led me to the point where I am in my career? And I think it has. I think I can sit here today. We've got over sort of 90,000 workers across an area the size of Belgium that we're working at the moment. We're building hospitals, schools, bridges, and I don't find myself panicking, or I don't find myself thinking, am I out of control? I feel that we're in control of what's happening, and I think my career path has helped me sort of achieve that.
John, you've reported directly to boards for most of your career. What do boards still misunderstand about safety performance?
That's a great question. I guess what you have to do is, lots of boards don't like to hear bad news. They like to hear good news. They like to see, a sea of green, as some people use that term, a sea of greens. We're doing really well. That's fantastic. And for me, it's about being a bit brave and being able to bring bad news sometimes, because sometimes you have bad news. I used to work for a guy, and a very, very smart guy, one of the smartest guys I've ever met. His father was the editor-in-chief of the Times. This guy was, and he was sort of telling me this sort of story as what his father used to say to the people that worked for him. You can sort of, back in the sort of 50s and 60s. And he said to me, I've always used this as well. I think it's great. And I share it with lots of other people. And it's no news is bad news. Often people say, no news is good news, but actually not true. He says no news is bad news, because if you haven't got any news at all, if you haven't got any data, you haven't got any information, you don't know what to do you? There's nothing you don't know whether you're doing well or you don't know whether you're doing badly. And actually, bad news is good news, because if you've got the bad news, at least you can do something about it. And good news is actually bad news. Because if everyone keeps coming and telling you good news and giving you good news, then you're just sitting on your laurels and you think, right, brilliant, it's great. And then when something does happen, it's a real shock to the system. So for me, I try and use that sort of principle that, if I give bad news to my boss and he has to give that bad news to his boss, which is the crown prince, by the way. So, and bad news, take it as the attitude that it's good news, because then at least you can do something with that bad news. Boards do like to see good news sometimes. The other thing I found as well is actually is people underestimate how much you can use the board to your own advantage as well. So a typical board has got very, very sort of powerful, very influential, very smart people. They should be very smart, sat around that board table. They're there for a reason. And I find that it's actually, you can use them to your advantage. You can come and tell them what your challenges are, what your problems are, and you can come and look for help for them to help you out. At the same time, they've got to see that the person who's delivering that story, whatever it is, that news, that they are confident, that they know what they're doing. So you have to appear in front of a board. You're the expert. If you appear like that and you present yourself like that, then it's easier to get them on your side.
Absolutely. And when the executives say zero harm, what do they actually mean, in your opinion?
Well, firstly, it's great when you get the executives to say zero harm. Do you know what? There's I don't know if you've seen on sort of social media these days and LinkedIn. There's so much conversation around zero harm, and it seems to have gone full circle, because maybe if I think back to when we launched our zero harm campaign in Balfour Beatty, this was back in 2009, 2010. And at the time, it was quite a new concept. It wasn't new, but it was new to the industry. It kind of like, even before that, I think it came out of the mining industry in Australia, the term zero harm. But when we took that term on within Balfour Beatty, it was an incredibly ambitious vision. And that's what it was. It was to create a work environment where everybody, no matter what, went home safe. It was to create an environment where, harm didn't occur. And at the time, everyone was like, that's impossible. But for us, we didn't see it as impossible, because we actually defined what we meant by harm, and we set ourselves a very ambitious goal in the future to reach it. So these days, when people talk about zero harm, there's lots of negativity around zero harm. Lots of people talk about zero harm and they say it's impossible. So why say it? Because all you're doing is you're selling something that's just not possible, and that is that puts you at a disadvantage. I disagree. I do disagree. The first thing I'd say is zero harm is achievable. It might not happen today or tomorrow or in a couple of years or 5 years. But within the workplace, I think within my lifetime, everybody going home safe is absolutely impossible, especially with the advance of technology and the advance of sort of better equipment and better training. So I fundamentally disagree with people when they say it's not possible.
Absolutely.
And the second thing is why not be positive? Why not say zero harm? Why not have a really extremely difficult goal to try and achieve? I mean, I run, I love running. And, I set myself a goal of doing 10 kilometers less than 40 minutes. I've probably got no chance to get in there right now at the age of 55, but I'm not going to sort of not aim for that target, because, hey, I might surprise them. And so I think, why can't you apply the same principle at work? Why can't you get people to think really big really positively. And maybe even if you get 80% of the way there, isn't that great?
So some of these things is about driving the culture change. And I can see that you've done that already in Balfour Beatty, for example. So in your experience, what drives this? So the safer outcomes are they behavioral? Is it leadership tone, as you touched on? Is it systems? You mentioned the first time we met about safety by design or design for safety.
Yeah.
Still sits with me. So how do you drive that? How do you drive that cultural mindset shift?
So it's not easy. And again, lots of people use the term safety culture. You can have a poor safety culture and you can have a very positive safety culture. Safety culture doesn't equal just one thing. And even people argue that it actually shouldn't even just be safety culture. It should be the culture of the organization, the mindset of the organization. And if you have the right mindset, the right culture within any organization, and whether it's safety, quality, sustainability, whether it's it's caring for your sort of people, then that should be the same if you've got the right culture. I think the thing that people underestimate is how long it takes to change a culture, to take a culture from, say, being a sort of poor culture, not a learning culture, for example, to making them a real sort of positive, forward culture. Anywhere between 3 and 5 years, people should be expected to sort of work and not see results. Really, it depends at what point you're starting at. But if you're starting from a really low base, it might take 5 years. It might take a lot of changing people. Because they won't fit in with the new culture, and they might actually be a hindrance to the change in the culture that you're looking for. So you might have to be bold and sort of say, look, I'm sorry, thanks for the work so far. You've done great, up to this point, but we're changing direction. And maybe you don't fit in. And that's okay, because not everybody does fit into culture. So it is a journey you have to take people on. And there's lots of things you have to look at. You talked a few things there around systems, around sort of people, around attitudes, behaviors, and it's all of that. Actually, I don't think it's one thing. It isn't just about compliance. Culture isn't about compliance. Culture is, for me, simply is that you can tell a culture because that's the way you do things around here. You kind of know it. That's the way to behave. I kind of use this way of trying to explain to people when it comes to how people should dress, for example, at work. So if you go to, say, Burger King, you dress in a certain way, don't you? You can go in your shorts, you can go in your t-shirt, and that's okay. But if you go to the Ivy, you're not going to go in your shorts and t-shirt, are you? You're going to kind of dress up. You're going to look good. You put your smart clothes on. You want to feel better. That's kind of what the workplace should be like. You should kind of know how you should dress. You should know how you behave, because that's the culture of the organization. You turn smart because that's what the organization expects. So I think that's kind of that's one way of knowing what the culture is within an organization. And it's changing people. It's educating people. It's letting them see what the future looks like, what your vision is around sort of how the organization, how it reacts to things, how it reacts to sort of bad news, for example. That's a good way of sort of understanding the culture of the organization. So it is a process. It takes time and it involves lots and lots of different things.
100%. So, as you said, it does take time, and I cannot agree more on this point, because you're changing behaviors, and that on its own it's a lot of work. You're changing thinking, and it all takes time. But also, we are today expecting to go 0 to 100 as well in no time, whereas on-ground reality is a lot slower and tedious, because you expecting people to go from paper checklist to straight to AI first platforms.
Yeah.
How much time, space do you have to accept this shift, and bear in mind that it takes time?
Yeah. And I don't think, I think if you rush it in terms of, if you look at sort of changing a sort of from one to another, I think if you rush it, it fails. It completely fails. I'm really surprised when I talk to, say, technology companies, for example, and they want to try and sell you something, sell you their product, and their product might be excellent. It might be really, really good. But I'm really surprised when there's no sort of proof of concept involved at all. It's just like, here's a bunch of, here's a load of equipment, give us some money and you can guarantee it's going to sort of work for your business because it works over here. Well, it might well work over there, but we might have a very different organization. We might have a very different culture. We might have very different sort of people or how we approach things. So I'm really surprised that people don't, that as a matter of sort of course, carry out like a proof of concept. In the past, certainly when I've introduced technology, I always start off really, really small. A small group of people, a small task, not too complicated, well controlled. It has a start time, it has an end point, and you're collecting data along the way, and then you review that end point and you see if it's a fit for the business. Because one of the mistakes people make is it's a great headline, especially at the moment with AI and the use of the AI, with everything. Everything's AI at the moment. Every bit of equipment's got AI in, even though it's not AI at all. It's probably, it's just a system that uses some smart technology, which is fine, which is good. But it's a term that people want to use and want to grab onto. So for me, you have to test the system within your organization first before you make a decision. I'll give you an example. So when I first came here nearly 3 years ago, we had a technology company, weren't they were, but they were basically almost about to deliver on a contract. That contract was worth 70 million SAR, and it was to deliver smart ID badges to people, to all of our workforce, smart ID badges that tracked workers wherever they were, and it basically told them what condition they were in, heart rate, heat exposure, heat of the body and things like that, temperature. And I looked at it and I thought, have we tested this? And they said, no. And I said, so when are they delivering this? And they said, oh, in a couple of months. And I said, has anybody figured out how this is going to work? How do we issue 90,000 ID badges? And who monitors the issue of it? And how do we make sure we get them back when the 300 workers leave in a week's time, come back?
Yeah.
And what happens when we've got a concentration of 35,000 workers in a really small area? What's that data going to tell us? And I can guarantee you, without question, in the summer in Saudi Arabia, every worker's temperature is going to be increased and everybody's going to be working with an elevated heart rate. Again, what is that going to what are we going to do with all that information? So I said, I'm sorry, but I'm not prepared to sign this because the system hasn't been tested and I don't know if it works or not. And just said no, because it's just, and the company wouldn't allow us to do a trial. They wanted, and they literally wanted to deliver 90,000 ID badges to us. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. With technology, it's about testing. It's about proving that the concept works. And more importantly, actually figuring out, is it going to be good for the business? Is it going to make you better? Is it going to make you safer?
100%. Absolutely. Starting small and then rolling it out to the wider organization. I 100% agree. It's the way to go. Then when we talk about systems as this, for example, we have so many different personas and personnels involved. The people who are signing off and, let's say, demoing and doing the trial versus the actual field worker who has to use it. Now, here we're talking about ID technology. Let's say we're talking about a safety inspection checklist or a compliance checklist and so on. We're talking cheese. Such a huge difference in terms of digital, awareness, in terms of the understanding of technology and so on. At what point, when rolling out such important, critical systems in the business, what do you think are the biggest challenges you face? Because some of the things that we see every day is a disconnect from field to office, because the implementation of the software on ground is a nightmare while it was rolled out. And I've done that mistake myself of buying a software for one of the construction companies that I used to work for, which I was completely sold on because I've never for a day worked on field. So it made sense for me. But the moment the rubber hit the ground, it was exceptionally difficult. How do you control that kind of gap?
Yeah, I mean, it can be avoided, but it's an easy trap to fall into. Where I've seen certainly in my career, people develop a platform or a system in the office, in the nice air-conditioned office or the warm office, and then they deliver that to sort of somebody working on site who's in and out of sort of tunnels, basement areas, on and off sort of scaffolding, for example, in sort of really quite sort of like rough terrain, and then when it doesn't work, they're really surprised and think, well, I don't know how that happened. I mean, it all worked well. So I think you certainly have to, whoever's involved, they have to be involved from the start, and they have to help you design and put together that system. Real users, end users have to help you sort of develop that system. What might sound really useful in the office, for example, I need this and I need that, might be really difficult to get hold of out in the field. So the way I approach it is I'm really, really flexible. So I what's really helped for me is I set an objective. That's what I do. And I set that objective, and then whatever we need to do to achieve that objective, I don't mind. I don't care. If I've got, say for example, let's take a bit of SHE software, safety, health, environment, sort of digital sort of platform, something like that, where I investigate an accident, for example. So in my mind, I've got a way of investigating that, and I've got a process, but maybe the system doesn't work that way. So my objective is, to carry out causal analysis of that incident. It might not be the way I do it, but has it met my objective? And if the answer is yes, then I'm happy. And you've got to be a little bit flexible. I've seen people in the past, they've got one way of, let's say they've got a paper-based inspection form. They want that paper-based inspection form exactly the same on that digital platform. And sometimes it might not work. So what you've got to do is flexible. You've got to be flexible and sort of say, well, I want to carry out an inspection and I want it to cover these things. I don't mind if it's different on the digital platform. I need it to work, and I need it to deliver these answers, this solution for me. And some people aren't. Surprisingly, some people are not that flexible. They're very rigid, and I think that's where it fails. For me, it's about working with the technology partner and saying, like, well, I want this. And they say, well, that's great. How about this? And you kind of come to a point where you can deliver, and you deliver what I want.
And when we talk about inspections at a scale like yours, inspections must be enormous in volume. Now, how confident are you that inspections actually surface the right risks? And is the inspection data currently, let's say, predictive or is it retrospective? How do you see that?
To pick up on your first point, yes, it is absolutely ridiculous. We have thousands and thousands of inspections and thousands of audits as well. Do they deliver the results that I want? Do they pick up the things that I expect to pick up on? No, they don't. 99% of them are a waste of time. They, and I'm being brutally honest there. We tick a box, say we carry out an audit and we carry out an inspection, but they're not finding the things that that they should be finding, and that's because people have a pretty standard checklist to go along. They have a pretty standard scoring mechanism that they have to meet, and the worst thing is when they set a minimum score because everybody wants to be over the minimum score. Therefore, no one's with the minimum score. Therefore, everyone's doing great and everything's fantastic. And I just know that simply isn't true. I was out on site yesterday, picked up 5 or 6 things which were so glaringly obvious. I had to go back to my team and say, when were you last on site? When were you last there? They said, well, we were there in the morning before you. So why have I arrived on site and I've found 5 or 6 really sort of hazardous things, risky areas? Why didn't you pick that up? Well, because they're not on the inspection sheet. They're not on the form. And I'm like, well, that's so get rid of the form and just go and have a walk. Go out and talk to people. Go out and have a look at things. Lift up the carpet. Open the door. Climb up the ladder. Go and use your eyes, your ears. Get out there and just have a walk. That's sometimes the best thing you can do. The other thing I get as well is we can't inspect everywhere because it takes us half an hour to do one inspection and there are 30 buildings. So don't spend half an hour. Spend 10 minutes in every building. You'll see things within that 10 minutes. So it's yes, I understand why we do it, because sometimes it's there to just show that we're doing stuff. But are we getting the value from them? No, we're not.
So then to the next question in terms of predictive information or retrospective, how do you see the data coming from these ongoing inspections? Or what's your vision, at least?
Well, it's all retrospective at the moment. What I'd love to be able to say that one day we can highlight areas. Let's say we inspect an area, we find things, and then you kind of, before you get to the next place, it's going to tell you what's potentially going to be wrong in this area. Based on your results over the past sort of 6 months, I guarantee you walk in that structure there, you're going to find these things. Look here, look there, have a look at here. Because you know what? Honestly, I'm not being funny. That's 30 years of experience in my head. When I walk into an area or a work site, I know what to look for because I've seen it before. These things happen. I absolutely know that if I walk up that ladder, I'm going to find this because over the last 30 odd years, these are that's the information that's built up in my mind. So wouldn't it be nice if we had a sort of bit of software or a bit of technology that I could give to a young safety professional and say, there you go, there's 30 years of experience there, go into that structure and it's going to tell you what you're going to be looking for or what you'll find. That's successful predictive software, I think.
You've also seen the evolution from paper to digital, and now we have enormous amount of data. Do you think have we actually evolved on how we use this data? Are you seeing that we're just counting incident, or as organizations or culture, inspection culture, field first thinking? Are we seeing that there's a mindset shift and we're learning from these patterns collectively?
Sometimes people think I'm a technophobe, because I often sort of, criticize technology, but I criticize it for the right reason. I actually love technology. I hate paper. I don't know why we're still using paper. I look at paper and I just really just cringe when I see somebody carrying out an inspection or an audit using a piece of paper. For me, my heart sinks, honestly. It's just crazy. Even paper money. I don't know why we have paper money anymore. I think paper we should stop it now. There's no reason why we can't. The problem when you improve your system and make it easier for people collect information, one of the problems is actually you create more data because it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that in turn causes a problem because if you've got too much data, people don't know where to look, and sometimes they miss things. I'll give you an example.
Absolutely.
So, a few years ago, back when I was at a previous organization, we had a driver. He was a supervisor. He finished his shift at 6:00 in the morning, and he got into his vehicle and he drove home. And during the journey, he hit a bit of water on the road. He aquaplaned off the road, and his vehicle hit a tree, and he was killed instantly. It was very, very tragic. A father, 2 young children. It was an awful, awful situation. So that vehicle had telematics fitted into the vehicle, and it told us what speed he was traveling at. It told us even whether he was wearing his seatbelt, and it told us whether he was using a mobile phone. So all the telematics were in that vehicle. At the time of the incident, he was speeding. At the time of the incident, he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. And at the time of the incident, he was on his phone. Now, we went back and looked at the records of that individual over the previous few months. The records, the monthly report, told his manager that he consistently didn't wear his seatbelt. He was consistently using his mobile phone while he was driving. He excessively speeding, using his brake aggressively. And we spoke to his manager and said, why didn't you pick up on any of this? Why didn't you see this? And he said, John, honestly, I get so much information every month. I get so many emails. I don't know what to look at. I don't know what I need to look at. And I missed this. And if he hadn't missed it, maybe he'd have saved that person's life. Improving how we collect information, improving how we distribute information is fantastic. And we have to do that. But we've got to watch then how much information and how we are sending that information, how they're receiving that information really, really carefully.
It is a very difficult situation to be in, especially when real lives are involved and such a great amount of risk. So what would the best case scenario look like for you in terms of if you had an opportunity to build a system that mitigated these risks, both for business and for the lives on ground? What would that look like?
It's got to be, I don't know if this is the right term, but you've got to have sort of exception reporting. You've got to have something that, you've let's say 60% of what you're doing is pretty standard. And this is kind of like the information that you're going to use. Don't ignore it, but it's really useful. But you've got to have something that really puts you in the face, that grabs hold of you and says, hey, of all this stuff that you're reading, of all this stuff that's coming to you, you need to look at A, B, and C, because this is the stuff that's really going to sort of cause you the problem down the line. This is the stuff that you need to be aware of and do something about. So it's like a sort of smart system. We've used Microsoft Copilot recently into our software, and it's great, because it actually summarizes like your emails and things, and it summarizes your sort of calendar appointments, and it gives you your sort of top 3 or 4 things that you need to do. So it's kind of like telling you, it's sort of saying, you've got 50 emails, but you know what, John, you need to look at number 1, 2, and 3, because these are the ones that need your immediate attention. It's not always right. Sometimes it's a little bit sort of like off, but hey, it's early days. That if I was building a system, I'd want something where, let's say, I've got 200 people that work for me as a safety professional across a real spread of the country, and soon it will be internationally as well. And I get lots and lots of reports. I want something that's come along and slap me in the face and say, of all these reports that you've got, this is the one you need to read. So it's kind of like, something, whether it's a graph, whether it's an alert, or whether it's something, keep an eye on this one, because we've collected this data, and do you know what? Something's going to happen here if you don't do something about it. If we had something like that, if we look at my earlier story, if we had something like that said, hey, do you know Joe Bloggs, who's driving vehicle XYZ, for the last 3 months he's been doing this. So you need to do something about it.
Because we talk often about field productivity and field efficiency and so on. And I think you've nailed it absolutely right on the head, because here we're talking about it relentlessly prioritizing the highest risk situations instead of being busy in too many things, because you could be doing a lot of work, you could be tiring yourself out, but you may be not doing the right thing. So having clarity and predictability around that perhaps is where we can make a real difference.
Absolutely.
John, how big is your team?
So we have around 200 HSE professionals, and they're based mainly along the Red Sea coast. We have a team sat in the office here with about sort of 12 individuals that deal with medical services, reporting, HSE management systems, operational sort of standards, i.e., once we've built, how do you run a hotel? Sort of that type of sort of that role as well. So it's and it ranges from very young Saudi nationals who are new to the industry, right through to expats that are almost as old as me and as long in the tooth as me. So it's a real spread, and we tend to use the expats and those that have sort of been around a while. We tend to use those to mentor and teach the young Saudi nationals how we do this job, what's expected of us. And it's fantastic because we're seeing some really bright young individuals that are coming through. And when we move on, because that's what we do, that's what we're here for, as part of the role is to educate. Once we move on, hopefully then we'll see the standards that we've set, the standards that we are setting. Hopefully we'll see the country as a whole pick up those standards and become pretty world leading. That's what we're hoping in terms of sort of health and safety standards. So it's a very diverse team as well, culturally, in terms of the people. We've got people from all over the world: Australia, South Africa, Pakistan, India, Nepal. You've got Canadians, Kiwis, Brits, Europeans, everything. And obviously Saudis as well. One of the things I'd say is, I spent 8 years before I was here. I spent 8 years in the UK, and I found we tried to force or social engineer sort of groups of people to get together, and sort of we tried to force it. We tried to force sort of culture, but here I think naturally happens because there are so many different sort of people from different backgrounds that have sort of come together to do the job, and I think naturally that you have a very understanding, a workforce, a sort of work environment, I should say, that listens to other people's point of views, listens and understands people's sort of their own cultures and religion and things like that. And I think it's wonderful. It really is, to see how sort of the different mix and diversity of people within the workplace. It really is fantastic. I've not seen it in a UK workplace, for example, work like that.
I can only imagine. It's a huge team. It's a huge responsibility. So what keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? Well, there's lots of things that do keep me up at night, but I tend to try and get good sleep as well. I'm not up because I'm worried. I'm up actually, or awake, because I want to think what I need to be doing the next day. I've got quite a busy mind. And I try and partition bits of sort of what's happening in life, what's happening at home, what's happening at work. If you ask me how I do that, I think probably I'll go back to my military career, because one thing in the military does, it helps you, it teaches you about resilience. It teaches you how to really tough situation. And at the time when you are in your training, you think to yourself, why am I doing this? Why are they making me run up this hill 50 times and then go and do something a bit more technical after that? It's because they want you to be able to perform when you're at your lowest. That's what they're doing. They're teaching you to deal with a tough situation. I remember when I did my diver training, my initial training. So part of it is you go into the water. You go and sit 4 meters below the water, and you're on a surface demand, like so the surface supplied air, And then they gave me a hammer and a chisel and a piece of basically steel. And they said, we want you to break the steel. We want you to break the steel under the water. And I was like, that seems impossible. That seems crazy. So I went under the water and I was freezing cold. My suit was leaking. I was hammering away like this. I had no idea how long I'd been under there. I had no watch or anything like that. What felt like hours and hours I was under there. There was 10 of us that went into the water. And when I came up, there was only 3 people who came up from the water. Before that, the rest had thought, sod this, I've had enough. I'm going home. I don't want to do this.
Oh, wow.
3 of us that came up, we looked at each other and thought, where's everyone else gone? And afterwards, it was only like a while afterwards, I was talking to one of the instructors and said, why do you make us do that? What is the point? And he said, well, because we need people that are going to stick it out. When it's tough and you're cold and you're suit leaking, the job seems just ridiculous. We need people to stick at it and keep going. And those that stick at it are the ones we take forward, and you go on to further training. And it's kind of like now in life. It's like it would be easy for me or people like me to give it up because it's hard, really tough. It's like there's loads of stuff to do. Thousands of workers, and they do crazy things, and the systems aren't great. But it'd be easy to give it up, and that's not what we need to do. We need to stick at it and sort of make it work.
I cannot appreciate that message enough. It's all about keep going and resilience. That's how you can actually summarize life. And what if you had one piece of advice for field operators, field leaders, people in this, senior HSE roles like yourself, from all your experience, what would that be?
Oh my gosh. What I guess my bit of advice probably would be, don't presume that you know the answer. Don't think that you're the only one who has got it right. I like to hear lots and lots of people's opinions, and some people think that's me delaying the response, or that's me passing the book, but it's not. I want to hear from other people because I don't presume to know the answer. All of the sort of problems. So when I like people arguing with me or debating with me, because I'm not always right. So I think if that would be a bit of a good advice is literally just be prepared to think that you haven't got the right answer. You're not the only one with the answer. There's people out there that might have a better answer than you. And just that point around that we talked about earlier about zero harm, it's okay to set a really ambitious target. That's okay. And just because you might not get there, again, failure is okay. It's all right. But if you get like almost there, then hey, you're better than where you started. So that's success, isn't it?
Absolutely. We need to redefine what success looks like. I have an impromptu round. So I'm going to give you 5 words and I want to hear first thought that comes to your mind when I say that. So you ready?
All right, go for it.
So here we go. Paperwork.
Hate it.
Fair. Absolutely fair. On-ground implementation.
Critical to success.
Near miss.
Valuable.
Field intelligence.
Essential.
And one of my absolute favorite, AI.
I love it. Absolutely. It's the future.
John, thank you so much again. It is such a pleasure to hear from you. Always so much wisdom from the field. And really, thank you so much again. We look forward to connecting with you again soon and really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
All the very best.